Okay, we'll begin. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Manvir Bhangu, and I am the founder of Laadliyan Celebrating and Empowering Daughters. We are a nonprofit organization based in Peel region, which is Brampton, Caledon, Mississauga. Before I begin today, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. I'm joining you today from Caledon, Ontario, which is part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit. I want to acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe and Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. As a settler on this land, whose family came here from India, from Punjab, India in the 80s, I'm extremely grateful to have the opportunity to work and live on this land, and by doing so, give my respect to its first inhabitants. So today I'll be talking to all of you a little bit about the work that I do, the organization that I'm from, and specifically our work with gender-based violence in the South Asian community. So for those of you who are not familiar, Laadliyan, which is a Punjabi word for daughters, it's a nonprofit organization which started off as a Facebook page in 2013, where stories of gender inequity and impacts of the gender inequity on daughters was being shared. In the beginning, I was really just, focused on sharing just stories, thoughts, opinions about what was happening to female fetuses, or, this was happening back home more than here at the time, around female feticide and female infanticide, and how that was impacting girls and women in my community. And so I started this nonprofit organization. At that time, I didn't know what a nonprofit was or what I was supposed to do. I just wanted to talk about it. So started a Facebook page, and over the years, we have now become an incorporated nonprofit organization working across Canada, connecting girls and women of all ages within the South Asian community, and talking about things that we're not usually talking about at our dinner tables. So there's a lot of topics that have a lot of stigma attached to being one of them. And so our mission is really to empower individuals through education, engagement, and awareness, and promote gender equity within our community. And we do it with all ages. We do it with little girls, we do it with teenagers, we do it with adults, we do it with seniors. And I really focus on promoting intergenerational communication and intergenerational connection, because within South Asian community, for example, there is a lot of intergenerational trauma, intergenerational stigma that exists, and a lot of families are multi-generational families living in multi-generational homes. So we're trying to use that as kind of a point of contact when we're working within the South Asian community. So today we're talking primarily about gender-based violence. So as I said earlier, there's a lot of things that we don't talk about within the South Asian community, whether that's GBV, that's sex-selective abortions, menstrual hygiene, menstrual health, sexual health, sexism, the patriarchy. There's so many things that are just off topic, or you don't talk about it, on your day-to-day with your family. So what we try to do through Laadliyan is really bring these conversations to the forefront and shed light on these issues and address them and come up with solutions. So gender-based violence is one of those topics that never sat well with me, and I always wanted to address it. In 2020, we had an opportunity to apply for some funding from YWCA Toronto to hold some community consultations on gender-based violence within the South Asian community specifically. And we were very thankful to have 50 community members who had registered to join us for this session. And it was a very laid-back conversation about what's happening in the community. And it was one of the first things that we did openly with our community members to really talk about this issue. And we were very blown away by the response that we got from people who wanted to talk about this. And that was not just women and girls, but there was also men and boys that wanted to talk about it. And from there, we held this consultation, and we just had a conversation and started talking about some of the themes that we were seeing. And generally, people were sharing that there aren't a lot of opportunities to do this. So from there, we thought that that's great. We've done this consultation, and this consultation was now going to inform Canada's national plan to end gender-based violence, which is all well and good. But how can we make immediate change in our own community instead of waiting on something to happen 2 years or 3 years from now? So we had this idea around kind of engaging some of the more vocal people in that group about what can we do? How can we take this to the next step? So people had naturally shared with us that they wanted to do more, they wanted to talk about this more, and they were able to offer support and, for example, research or evaluation. So from there on, we started to develop this group of women who wanted to come together and put a needs assessment together. And one commonality that we saw, between everyone who reached out to us was that they were all daughters in their families who had witnessed GBV in their homes and wanted to do something about it. So they may not necessarily have experienced it directly, but they may have been the daughter, of a mother who was going through it, or an aunt, or a sister, or a grandmother. And they were all, that was kind of the common theme between all these young women who had reached out. So from there, we created this opportunity to engage at a much more intimate level. We had about 16 girls and women join us, and we started talking about what are some of the needs that we're seeing in our community that are not being addressed right now. Of course, we have gender-based violence programming, and there's shelters and there's supports, but culturally specific supports and resources are missing, and we know that. So we wanted to dig through that a little bit deeper. And we then, put together this needs assessment, and what came out of the needs assessment was it wasn't shocking because, we've already, growing up in this community, growing up the way that we did, we already know that these things exist, but rarely are we able to find information or stats on these types of communities because, it's not really captured within race-based data. And a lot of the times it's not reported. So we found that some of our themes that we had identified through the needs assessment was that gender-based violence education for families and just education on breaking intergenerational stigma is missing. And there's just not enough people that are focusing on doing that for the South Asian community. There's just not enough organizations or resources that are particularly focusing on the nuances within the South Asian community, and then within sub-communities within the larger South Asian community, because we're not just one monolith of people. There's so many different intersecting identities, and depending on which part of South Asia you come from, which language you speak, which cultural background you belong to. And then there's also a need identified for therapy and support groups to enhance mental health, and the need for, again, appropriate and culturally sensitive resources. And one thing that really kept coming up again and again was a need for institutional supports. So whether that's religious institutions, academic institutions, or community organizations that are already up and running and have the big dollars and the budget that's needed. And then, of course, workshops, which is something that Laadliyan has been doing a lot of since then. And then a need for some toolkits and resources to be developed are culturally appropriate, as well as translate into different languages. So we know that with the work that we do, it's not always easy to translate everything from English into Punjabi or Hindi or Urdu, for example. And sometimes things get lost in translation. So even for us to take a step back and to understand, if we're about to educate our community on gender-based violence, it's not as simple as saying, this is gender-based violence, this is what it looks like, right? We really have to define and think about what gender roles traditionally mean within these communities, what women might need to unlearn that they've been taught their whole life. And these are women who are immigrant women who came here came to Canada, usually didn't know many people, came with their husbands, and had to build a life all over again. So we have to keep all these things in mind when we're thinking about how to address gender-based violence. So with that needs assessment, came a bunch of recommendations that these daughters had provided us, and it really focused on a multi-pronged approach where it's not just, oh, we're going to provide you with therapy or we're going to provide you with shelter. There's much more that we have to do, and acknowledging that many times gender-based violence may not even be seen as gender-based violence by these women or these girls who are experiencing it, because it may be so normalized in their households or in their community that they're not able to tell that this is not okay, or this is toxic, or this is inappropriate, or this is abuse. So we then put together this needs assessment report that we shared with community members and academic institutions and religious institutions. We got a lot of positive feedback, but again, there's only so much that you can do with a piece of paper, and you need to put it into action and make things happen. So we, from there, started to strategize, how can we as a smaller organization in the larger scheme of things do something to support or build capacity of these daughters who are often the ones making, or navigating the social services for their mothers or their aunts. They're the ones that are educating their mothers or their aunts about gender-based violence. They're the ones that are advocating in their family, like, hey, this is wrong, we can't do this, or you can't talk to mom like that, or you can't stop someone from doing what they want to do just because you're a male, which is some of the common themes that we see within our community. And we decided to put together a toolkit, a very easy to use, simplified version of like, what you would see online, that anyone can pick up and help their mom or their aunt kind of navigate gender-based violence through. We're currently in the process of translating it into Hindi, Punjabi, and Urdu. If you are in this space, you know that these things are not cheap. And again, we are we're a smaller nonprofit organization, so we don't always have the capacity to do these things right away or overnight. So we're getting there. But once that is ready to go, we have talked to a couple of Sikh temples, gurdwaras, mandirs who are willing to keep a copy or a couple of copies locations, so that if someone is coming in and is in need, they can take that away from them and make sense of what's happening. And what's really troubling and girls is how much of gender-based violence is impacting the next generation. And these are, again, as I mentioned, these are young women who are not necessarily directly being abused, but they're witnessing abuse, and that has its own impacts. So daughters, shared with us that they have developed a complex PTSD and numerous other health effects related to stress. And they're holding a lot of resentment towards their moms or their aunts for, either calling the police or not calling the police and getting help. And navigating that as a young person is difficult for them. So, and a lot of them also shared that they are kind of expected to be that support person for their mom, who won't let them go, share it with anybody else, who won't let them go and report it to the police or the authorities to get support. So this young person now has to hold it all in, function at school, function at work, be in relationships, and have a normal life while helping their mom navigate this huge thing that's happening, which is causing a lot of other issues for young women in our community. So these were some of the things that came up for us. And it's very hard for those of you who may resonate with anything that I'm saying, to challenge harmful familial, cultural, and societal factors. But it's definitely needed. And I think this needs assessment really showed us that young people, or young women at least, are the ones that have really identified that this is wrong and we can't continue this on for the next generation, and we need to break the generational trauma that's passed on, and are hoping to go back into their families and their communities and start these conversations at a smaller scale. If we just hold a webinar and say, oh, this is what gender-based violence is, it doesn't work. We've tried that. We need to use for example, at Laadliyan, we use a lot of our youth to kind of be the change makers in their immediate families. And that's been really successful from our end of sending, building the capacity of these young women to have whatever tools they need to go back home and educate their parents. It is quite a burden for a young person, but it's for us, it's a much more successful approach than directly trying to tell a mother who's in her 50s or 60s that what she's going through is difficult and she should leave, because it's not as easy as I can just pack my bags and leave, as we all know. So that's a little bit about the work that we're doing. We've also, and all of these, our needs assessment and our toolkit can be found on our website, which is www.laadliyan.com, Laadliyan. And you can take a look there and read the full report there as well. Thank you so much. Oh, I see there's a question. Give me 1 second. Oh, okay, I love this one. So thank you for those of you who want to get involved. Then that I always say to anyone who says, how can I get involved? I believe that when I was growing up, one of the things that I really felt was missing was mentorship for me. I think if you have adult allies, or just people in your community who are there for you, who understand you, who get the cultural nuances, it really helps with, career choices, academic choices, social choices. So we have a really neat program that we've created called Laadli to Laadli Mentorship Program. It's a Canada-wide program, and it's open for anyone who identifies as a South Asian girl or a woman and is over 16 years or older. And you can sign up to be either a mentor or a mentee. We're never too old to be mentees either. And we're really looking for, girls and women from different walks of life, different experiences, different career paths, who can support someone younger or someone else in the community through their experiences, and just kind of be that helping hand, because a lot of us are maybe the first daughter in our family and navigating all these things for the first time, especially if you're a woman of color. And so we really try to promote mentorship through our work, and that's what we do through our intergenerational programming between mothers and grandmothers and daughters as well, is to really support them in understanding each other through mentorship. So that's one way that people can get involved. We also have a general volunteer list on our website as well that you can register yourself up for. And when something opens up, we'd be happy to connect. And we're always doing events and workshops. So feel free to sign up for our newsletter on our website, and you'll get all of the information right hot off the press when it's ready. Okay. I hope that was helpful. I know it's really quick, but if there's any questions, you can always reach out to us through our website as well. I'd be happy to chat further. And please do take a look at our work that I just spoke about, the needs assessment and the toolkit that we've created.